Hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the Untangle 101 webinar series. Today we'll be discussing Untangle's NG Firewall product, what it does and how it can help your network environment. If you're unfamiliar with Untangle, then this is the perfect webinar for you. My name is Shannon Bonfiglio. I'm part of the product marketing team here at Untangle, and I'll be your host today. I also have with us one of our sales engineers, Chad McNaughton, and he will be taking us through the presentation and the demonstration. Can you go to the next slide, Chad? Thank you. So just a few housekeeping rules before I pass it over to Chad. Please be sure you are selecting the correct audio preference on the right-hand side. If you do select to use a phone, you will need to dial in and use the access code that's provided. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch or share the recording with anyone you want, or if you need to go back and listen a little bit further, that's available to you. We do send an email with that link within 24 hours after this webinar has ended. And as always, we'll be answering questions throughout the presentation. We have a couple team members on hand to help answer any questions, so you can submit those through the Q&A box in the right-hand side. And if we don't get to your question, or if you have a very specific question in terms of your network setup, we'd be happy to help if you email us at sales@untangle.com. And with that, I will pass it over to Chad.
All right, thanks, Shannon. Thanks, everybody, for jumping on. Like Shannon said, this is a 101 level webinar, so we will not be doing a deep dive into technical aspects of the software. So this is a very much introductory webinar. So for those of you who are new, Untangle as a company is not exactly young anymore. We're about 14 years old. We were founded in 2003. We're still headquartered in San Jose, California, but we do have an office out here west of Denver, Colorado, where I work. So between those two offices, you know, we're still a pretty small crew, but we are doing some pretty fun things as a company, and we've been around for a while. So despite, you know, how we kind of still sound like a new kid on the block, we have actually been around for quite a while out in the valley. So this is an interesting point in the history of firewalls, to be honest. SMBs, specifically small businesses, small to medium businesses, are becoming targets in cyberspace. And this isn't defined to a certain industry. This isn't limited to certain types of businesses. This is a more or less global problem now. In the past, we only worried about large enterprises being targets for things like phishing and malware, ransomware, you know, things like these little hacks. It's changed now. These vectors have become more open for attackers to exploit, and small businesses have more at risk, I believe, without firewalls and things like this in front of their networks. As you can see by my graphic here, cloud adoption is changing the security landscape for SMBs, and this is a very, very important factor because it can do things like reduce cost. So cyber criminals, like I said, are now seeing small to medium businesses as easy targets, and this is because most of these small businesses don't have something like an Untangle device on their network because they basically don't know that they need that. So it's a tough thing right now. If you're not sure, maybe you need to do a little digging into the network traffic. Something like Untangle provides that visibility. SMBs are finally becoming aware of this growing threat, though. As you can see, the actual market forecast for losses in the SMB security market, I mean, these are numbers that we're tallying, you know, for things like security costs. This is the sign of the times. You know, everyone has to be secure now. So regardless of the size of your company, the nature of your business, it's a good idea to at least be proactive. It's hard to be retroactive when something like ransomware hits. Once it hits, it's there, and you're in trouble. You know, so if you don't have something like Untangle on the network, it's definitely time to start looking. The small to medium business cybersecurity disadvantage generally comes from a lack of resources. That can be everything from physical network infrastructure to you know, manpower, expertise, things like that. There are a growing number of threats all the time, and this is a hard thing for even one person to keep up with. A lot of small businesses have an IT person who's a jack of most trades. That person will never be a network security expert, I don't imagine. So you can lean on companies like Untangle. We have quite a few network security experts who work here. So that's a handy thing to leverage. A lot of small businesses are just daunted by the complexity of this stuff before we even look at the cost. Some of this can be really cost prohibitive though. You know, a lot of companies start at a pretty high rate when we look at budgets and hardware involvement and all that, and it's always bundled together. So Untangle is a very different company, and we'll talk about our deployment options, things like that here later. But just the complexity of getting visibility and trying to understand what's happening on your network can be pretty daunting. You know, this is overwhelming to some folks. As you can see here, around 50% of small businesses have already experienced some sort of attack. And that could be anything from a piece of malware, a DOS attack, all kinds of stuff. About 70% of all attacks are targeting SMBs now, and 60% of SMBs are going out of business within 6 months of an attack. That's startling to me. And it's like I said, you don't get to be retroactive with these things. You have to be proactive, because if you get hit with a piece of ransomware, and it's one of these that's, you know, hard to get around, pretty hard to decrypt and unlock, that's what can put a company out of business. You know, that's a really, really scary thing to me, but it's become a reality in our world. So let me introduce you to Untangle. This is a comprehensive UTM device, which is a unified threat management. So we focus on small, medium-sized businesses. We are what's called, quote, below enterprise in our market. It's quick and easy to deploy, it's easy to manage, and it's going to protect everything that your business and your reputation have worked so hard to accomplish. So when we get on the network, you instantly get visibility into all the packets we're seeing, all the traffic, and outside of that, we can start doing some pretty fun things with, you know, throttling and blocking and things like that. Untangle, to break it down, is a low-cost subscription-based software solution for SMB budgets. So we are a software company. This is a software as a service solution. But you can save costs by leveraging your existing hardware or a turnkey appliance. If you can find a little form factor box that matches your needs, matches our specs built for your needs, that kind of thing, knock yourself out. It is a pretty easy plug and play setup and deployment. That's assisted a lot now through our centralized management command center. We do have multiple channels of support, whether you have a subscription to our live support module, which gives you access to phone support with our team here in Colorado, or if you're using our ticketing system, our forums, our wiki, YouTube channel for webinars and tutorials. We do have a lot of different ways of supporting you. And like I mentioned, we are going to make you a little more proactive. You know, you'll have actionable alerts, you'll get notifications when certain things happen, and also historical reports. Untangle can retain up to a year of reporting data now, given the hard drive space. We also do offer advanced support remotely. If you need it, one of our support techs can remote in, take a look, do whatever we need to. This is a pretty handy thing with the live support module because it gives you time on the phone with a support tech who will remote into your box. And you do get seamless transparency. You know, Untangle, even when we're in a router mode, we're still transparent. You end users do not interact with Untangle unless you want them to, if they need to sign into a captive portal, for example, or something like that. So let's talk about our products here for just a second. Untangle does have a couple of different products. Our NG Firewall is our main software platform. So this is the platform for deploying our network-based security and policy apps. So when you install Untangle, if you buy an Untangle appliance, you get the Untangle platform. And then from there, you add our complete package on top, live support with it, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Our apps, which function at layer 7, will inspect traffic simultaneously, enforce rules. You know, you can share an admin panel, database, and reporting there from the apps. These are basically what you're licensing is our application filtering. So from there, we're doing, you know, web filtering with SSL inspection, traffic shaping at layer 7 with bandwidth control, virus blocking, all that fun stuff. And then we also offer our reports module, which is robust, to say the least now. It got a really nice overhaul here for version 13. The reports module is one of our all-stars now. Our reporting is industry standard, in my opinion. So like I mentioned, some of the features, we break them down into some categories here. Under protection, you know, we see our firewall and intrusion prevention, phish and virus blockers. To connect you, we have a lot of different VPN options, whether it's IPsec site-to-site tunnels, OpenVPN for remote workers, or our new Tunnel VPN app, which is doing some really interesting things and will let you stand up a tunnel to an SD-WAN, things like that. Send certain traffic or certain devices out of a VPN tunnel instead of your network connection. It does some fun stuff. In the filtration apps, this is where we get into filtering URLs on the web. So we'll see Web Filter SSL Inspector. Those are basically BFFs now. They are very much hand-in-hand apps. If you're not inspecting SSL traffic, you're going to miss 60 to 65% of the modern internet because it's all moved to HTTPS. We'll talk about that later. And you also see our spam blocker and ad blockers there. Under the management, we'll talk about our directory connector, which will leverage your directories for authentication if it's Active Directory, Radius Server, or Google with OAuth. Policy management, which lets us create different policies for different groups, different users. And then, like I mentioned, our reports. And under performance, this is where we see our bandwidth control app. That's the traffic shaping at layer 7 that I mentioned. And then also our WAN balancer and failovers if you do have multiple ISP connections. And our web cache if you want to cache some HTTP content, make things a little smoother if you have a low download speed, small connection. Web cache can help a lot. And as far as the add-ons go, a branding manager and live support, this is all included in our complete package. But those give you access to updating the Untangle branding to show your own company instead of Untangle's logos, your own verbiage on our splash pages, things like that. And then I mentioned live support already gives you phone access to support with our team here in Colorado. So to deploy Untangle, you have a lot of options now. So while we do offer appliances, virtual instances, we are doing some very interesting things now. So we have become kind of a hybrid cloud product. So you can manage all of your devices in the cloud through our command center, but there is an on-premise gateway powered by cloud intelligence, our Scout IQ, combined with command center. The virtual pipelining, if you don't need inefficient, a proxy chain, that traffic can be inspected by everything instantly. So by doing that all in one box, we're going to remove network latency across different pieces of your networking stack. And then we also have a lighter hardware footprint. It can be run on smaller, cheaper hardware, whether that's your hardware or our hardware. You might notice our little virtual cloud icon here too. Untangle can now also be deployed in the Amazon and Microsoft clouds. So we do have deployments for AWS and Azure now. And we also do have third-party routers that are sold with our firmware flashed on them on a Linksys or a Terrace Omnia. Those are sold by our third-party partners. A lot of options, though, to deploy, whether it's our hardware, yours, virtual or cloud. If you're using AWS, VMware, there's a ton of options to install Untangle now. So I mentioned it very passingly just now. Scout IQ is our cloud-based threat intelligence platform. So what this is doing is it's actually aggregating anonymous telemetry data from all the Untangle deployments worldwide. So when one Untangle box sees some unrecognized data, it instantly grabs all of that and ties it together with telemetry data and sends it up into the Scout IQ cloud, where it's analyzed, assessed, and then disseminated to all the other Untangles that connect to the cloud. It's a very quick process, and it's doing a very important function, which is providing telemetry data for zero-day infections. That's a really hard thing to determine because the telemetry data tells us where the malware distribution point is. So without that information, we are a little bit in the dark. So Scout IQ is doing a very, very useful thing by grabbing that telemetry data and telling all the other Untangles, hey, this IP is a malware distribution point. We know about it now. On average, a malware distribution point will stay up for about 70 hours. So that information is extremely important to get as soon as possible. So with Scout IQ, we get that pretty much instantly, and then it's spread to all the other Untangles. So it's going to identify threats seen in the wild. You can see here on our threat map, this is all on untangle.com under the cloud tab. You can see the top detections over the last month, the daily detections over the last month, and you can see the top malware delivery protocols. The biggest chunk there is SMTP. If you can't see it, that's the little red slice right there. That's port 25 email is all that is. Excuse me. So what we're looking at is phishing emails, ransomware, malware coming in on your email server and passing your gateway and getting to end users, which is the exact thing we're trying to prevent by being your gateway device and calling out to the cloud. So this is included with the Untangle virus blocker at no additional cost. It's a checkbox. It's checked by default. I don't know that you need to uncheck it. Honestly, this is a great service to have at no extra cost, because you're sharing and receiving information from all these other Untangles around the world when they see this stuff. I also vaguely mentioned Command Center, the other aspect of our cloud infrastructure. This is our cloud-based centralized management for your NG Firewall solutions. So this is going to let you easily manage multi-site deployments. You don't need additional hardware. This is all basically in the cloud as your account. You can get alerts, threat history, audit logs, some reports aggregate and specific to boxes. You can manage your licensing, your software updates, backups, all that stuff here. You can also clone, edit, and push policies across your fleet of devices. So this is a really important aspect of centralized management, is being able to create policy in the cloud and then push it from the cloud to your deployments. It's really just reducing, management overhead and costs from, going on site or keeping a record of everything that's up to date and everything that's got policies on it. You'll see all that stuff in one place now in our cloud in Command Center. So if you go to untangle.com/CMD, it's going to ask you to log on, and that's your Command Center account. Your account lives there now, all the policies, all the alerts. It's our newest product, but it's coming along very nicely. It's really cool. I personally use it every day to check my router at home when I'm at work. So I mentioned our appliances just a little. While we are a software company, we do offer this line of appliances. We have 3 different lines. Basically, our small SOHO SMB line, the little form factor U25, and then our U50. Those are both desktop models. Stick them on a shelf somewhere. You'll connect a keyboard, monitor, and mouse when you first get it, set it up, disconnect all that thing. Then it's a headless server on a bookshelf. And you can manage everything remotely. For the mid-market or a DC, we do offer these 1U rack mounts up to 150 and 500 devices, respectively. And then for bigger corporations, larger campuses, we do offer our M series, which is a 2U rack mount that goes from 1,500 up to 3,000 devices each box. So there are 2 boxes in that line. There's a 1,500 and a 3,000. There's just one image. So our hardware is spec'd for Untangle. It's got Untangle's platform already installed. It comes with a warranty. It comes with hardware support. But this is always up to you. If you want to buy one of our devices, that's great. It comes with Untangle pre-installed, and you get our help. If not, you can use your own hardware. You can go virtual. You can go cloud. So I think some of the key differentiators between us and some of the other vendors in our industry, I think number 1 is ease of deployment and use. As we get into the demo here in a second, you'll see that we have a pretty fully graphical UI in our solution. So people hear Linux server and they picture a command line interface, and sometimes that makes them run for the hills screaming. And I understand that. I'm a former graphic design teacher. I prefer the Untangle interface over a command line. It's just nicer to look at to me. But our solution is built specifically for SMB deployments. So you get the enterprise level security, but at a consumer level simplicity and hopefully cost. It is browser-based with fully responsive admin, and we do have industry-leading reporting on the box, and we'll show that off here in just a sec. The intelligent default settings have been tuned to real-world use cases. We run you through setup wizards. The configurations in a lot of apps will take you through a wizard and ask you if you want to choose one of these preset templates. And those can be really handy. If you're setting up traffic shaping rules and bandwidth control, it'll ask if you're a school or a business or a nonprofit or a church. So those will set up some predefined traffic shaping rules for you. It can be really helpful. Policy management with global top-down approach as opposed to complex bottom-up approach. And I'll show you our policy management. It's a very straightforward thing. It doesn't really matter how your traffic's coming through Untangle, whether they're coming from a directory, something like Active Directory with authentication, or if they're coming just as a client IP. We can pipe anyone through quite a few number of ways, depending on how we're seeing them. We do have the most comprehensive bandwidth shaping capabilities, including things like quota management and penalty boxes. So when you set up that wizard, like I just mentioned, you can enable quotas, which means you can put a quota on a host or a user and say this person gets 500 megabytes of data a day. And when they exceed their quota, we can take some steps then. Maybe they go to the penalty box with no bandwidth and they feel shame for 2 minutes and then they come back. There's a lot of different things we can do. So I'll show you some of that stuff here in the demo, but just keep in mind, as soon as the traffic's coming through Untangle, we can step in and take a lot of different actions to either punish or dissuade negative behavior on your network. And we also employ automatic seamless upgrades, so your product's always up to date, no downtime or manual intervention. Our upgrades are always free to upgrade to a new version of Untangle. They very rarely require a reboot of your server. We only do that basically when the Linux kernel updates. We haven't had to do that in a version or two. So the upgrades are seamless, no reboots, no interruption of service. As my spiel has let you see, Untangle is pretty flexible, and we can be extremely cost competitive. We are a software-based solution, but we can be deployed on your hardware, ours, as a virtual machine, or now in the cloud. And it is a freemium solution, so you can download from Untangle.com the platform, the free apps, the 14-day trial of the paid apps. That actually comes with live support. So if you download Untangle right now from Untangle.com, you'll get a 14-day trial of our complete package, and that includes live support. This is a huge testing and assessing tool to me, because you can get us live on your network, even in a bridge mode. You know, we'll still see traffic and you don't impact your users. And basically from there, you can see how many apps you like. You know, maybe you want the complete package, maybe you want just Virus Blocker. You also have live support during that entire 14-day trial, which can be huge. So please take advantage of that if you're trialing our software. Our support team's here to help. And as I mentioned, the cloud-based central management and on-box reports are included. No additional hardware requirements for any of that stuff. The centralized management is just part of your account now on Untangle.com. And then, as I said, no additional hardware to get to that. Just a little bit of recognition and some of our communities. We are starting to win a few awards. You know, our support team is one of my biggest selling points about Untangle. I think they separate us from our competitors, and they keep winning awards for us. So this is the second best in biz award they've won for customer service technical support. As you can see, you know, we're winning some awards for the product as well. As far as Spiceworks is concerned, we are the #1 software firewall and content filtering appliance. And as you can see on our community forums, it's a really active forum. You know, we have close to 50,000 members. It's a very different feel on Untangle forums than some other product forums. It's not like posting something elsewhere on the internet where you instantly, you know, get made fun of or derided. We have a very helpful community of Linux users and DIY freaks who love Untangle and want to install it on everything. We have some pretty powerful, helpful users who have written code for our product and help us out and things like that. So please utilize the forums. It's forums.untangle.com. Just a few quotes from some customers around the country. You know, ease of use was a deciding factor. You know, security doesn't have to be expensive. We've streamlined our operations there. You know, we're effectively providing safety, security, monitoring, and control. This is all just customer testimony. You know, these are all available on our site. If you want to go look at our case studies, testimonials, they're all available on untangle.com. And so now let's take a quick look at the Untangle software. So let me get out of this slide here real quick, and we'll jump over to my demo server, which I'm going to reconnect to real quick. So as this comes up, you guys can log on to this anytime you want as well. It's just demo.untangle.com. And I'd like to point out that this is actually hosted in the AWS cloud now. So this is an example of one of our cloud deployments. Works really well. We have some documentation on actually building the Amazon EC2 mainframe that you install into. So if you're curious about that, just shoot an email to support@untangle.com and ask us, and we'll get that conversation going. When you log into Untangle, it takes you by default to your dashboard here. This is a fully customizable dashboard that's widget-based. By default, we do some basic server metrics across the top. We do our geolocation here, CPU load, and basic interface usage. Down here, these are actual widgets pulling reporting data. So depending on what kind of information you're looking for, this can be completely customized. If you don't want to see these specific reports, you can just come over here to Manage Widgets. And you could disable these. You can drag them around if you'd like to rearrange things. Now I can see that one. Or if you're specifically looking for a report that's not on your dashboard. For example, maybe you've leveraged an Active Directory and you have usernames and you want to see those reports. You can come over here and just start typing username, and all those reports will pop up. So if I want to add one of these to my dashboard, all I have to do is click on the report and then click Add to Dashboard. It's pretty simple. It throws it down here at the bottom, and like I said, if you want to rearrange it, you can just drag it up. To get to the full report from one of these widgets, all you have to do, rather than clicking on our reports viewer, is you can just click right here on the little arrow. That's going to take you out to that report under our reports viewer. This is where you can do the full customization of our reports. If you want to just quick customize the chart, you can view that here. Our full reports viewer will show you about 400 default reports, and again, that search bar right here is going to be your best friend. You know, this is a quick, easy way to find the top sites by request. There they are. That's what I was looking for, and there it is. These are somewhat interactive here. If you're not looking, or if you're looking for pieces of information you're not seeing here, we might want to go customize the report. You know, change a condition or two. Untangle reporting, like I said, can retain up to a year of data now. So that will obviously depend on hard drive space and things like that. But if you need to keep that much data, we always recommend offloading anything beyond 30 days. So you can use syslog events, or you can offload reports to Google Drive now, which is a very handy thing. So this is our reports viewer, and it ties into our dashboard. So when you install the reports module into Untangle, it generates this dashboard and the reports viewer for you. So as long as you have reports installed, all this stuff will be available for you. Then from the dashboard, we can also jump into a session viewer. This is going to show us every session coming through Untangle in almost real time. Untangle does deep packet inspection, which eliminates absolute real-time reporting. So we're usually 20 seconds or so behind. Not very far, though. So between sessions and hosts and devices, you can get really good insight into exactly what's happening on the network, what hosts are doing what's happening on layer 7 filtering. If you see a specific session or sessions coming from a strange part of the world here on the map, you can click on these dots and see sessions narrowed down by country and then drill through all their information. So this is a really handy thing, the session viewer tied in with geolocation, because we're actually seeing client latitude and longitude off of these IPs now. So those tie back into true geolocation, which means we can go in and then block by country. The Untangle apps look a little different. If you're coming from an older version of Untangle and it's been a while, or if you're brand new to Untangle, this kind of looks a little bit like an app store, and that's by design. This is our new graphical user interface as of version 13. Untangle is on version 13.1 now, and we really went through and revamped everything. If you've come from an older version of Untangle, you're probably used to the old server rack view, and that's still available as a skin if you want to customize it and go back. But we recoded our user interface from the ground up because we had basically hit our limits with the old UI code. So we started over for version 13, and we came up with this interface. It's really, really fast, and it's really quick to render. And one of my favorite additions is the elimination of modal windows, like in Windows. So now I can actually use my back button. I can browse through my UVM with URLs. It's a very different feel than our old interface. One of the cool things about that to me is that if you're having a problem and you're working with our support team remotely, they can actually send you a URL copied from the page they want you to go to and say, hey, go to this page, tell me if this box is checked. That kind of thing. All you do is plug in your gateway IP, and there you are. You're right on the page they want you to be on. So that's a really powerful tool for our support techs when they're remotely troubleshooting. As far as Untangle's apps go, this is our complete package. Everything here is available individually or in a complete package. There's a lot of different ways to subscribe to Untangle's software. The basic all-stars of Untangle, I think, are web filtering with SSL inspection and connecting to a directory. We do that down here through a module called Directory Connector. And this is honestly one of the first things you would probably need to do with Untangle if you're getting set up on your network. Whether it's a Radius, Google, or Active Directory, we can connect to any one of those. And we just need you to enter your information here. I prefer, personally, the IP address to the host name. I feel like it works better. And then once we do that, we run a test, and we're connected to your Active Directory. Then we install our login notification script, which lets your AD tell us the username. So it's a very simple process, but it changes Untangle fundamentally from looking at client IP addresses to looking at usernames. So whether it's Radius or Google or AD, If you have authentication to leverage, we would love to leverage that so we can see those usernames in reports for a little bit more granularity and honestly a little bit better recourse if you do need to take some steps to punish someone's negative behavior. We should probably talk about web filtering because that's one of the main things people come to Untangle for. While you can see we do a lot more than that, we are one of the industry leaders in content filtering. And we do that a number of different ways. But to me, it starts with SSL inspection. Because the internet has moved so predominantly to HTTPS, as of this year, 60 to 65% of all internet traffic is HTTPS now. So these are statistics provided by Mozilla's statistics lab. They've been seeing more HTTPS than HTTP requests every day since January of 2016. So to be blunt, SSL has taken over and HTTPS runs the internet now. So if you don't install Untangle's root certificate on your endpoint devices, mobile devices, you are going to be missing a lot of the internet. You know, you'll miss about 60 to 65% of the modern web. So we do this through a root certificate deployment. So we can do that through Active Directory and group policy. We can do it through a captive portal. There's a few different ways to get the certificate to a device. The important part is this rule, though. My analogy nowadays is to think of the root certificate being deployed to a device as you just putting the key in the door. The root cert is the key. This rule here opens the door. So to inspect traffic coming across port 443, Facebook is a good example, we have to create a rule that tells us to look at that traffic. So we say any certificate subject coming across the secure sockets layer, port 443, with the word Facebook in it, we need to see it rather than ignore it. And the reason we do inspect is because we don't do inspect all traffic. Otherwise, we would do exclusions. What we do are inclusions. So if this box right here isn't checked, or I don't have a rule like this created, I'm completely in the dark because Facebook is 100% HTTPS now. That includes things like Farmville on your mobile app, Facebook Messenger, everything they do. It's secure now. So without a rule like this in place, we really can't take much action against their services. Once the rule is in place, we can actually come in and start filtering the web. So we do this through categorization to start with. There are about 600 million URLs categorized in here, so it's a very robust industry standard database we leverage. We can also do quick lookups here. We can also do a blacklist or whitelist if you want to pass or block a specific URL. We can also pass a specific client, like Jerry here doesn't want to be filtered on the internet on his local machine, so we set that up for him. But we also have rules now, so we can do more advanced inclusions or exclusions, some exemptions for folks within a policy. So if we need to, we can come in and say, yes, we're going to block flag sites for people who are over their quota, or we're going to block large downloads under the category games and the downloads are over a certain threshold. There's a lot of cool things we can do here in the web filter, but like I said, a lot of this requires SSL inspection because we can do some HTTPS processing with SNI, which is server name indication, but this is a host name rule, and we are not always presented host names anymore on the web. So this is not a complete solution. So if you need to really strictly step in, filter, block, throttle the internet in 2017, I feel like SSL inspection is probably required. Once you get that done, we are on my default policy still. If we want to now, we can create some policies and use these rules as a default. This is another one of Untangle's kind of all-star applications. This is where we can create different groups with different permissions. So you can see my default policy, which I just set up, has these apps installed and running, and the teacher and student policies are indented below it because they're actually inheriting the rules from above it. So if I needed to change anything, I could change it right here and that would trickle down to the teacher policy, or I could come to this policy and just install the app. So that's how we customize different applications for different groups. They don't all have to come from the default policy rules, but they can if you want them to. So under our policies, when you create a new one, you actually are asked if you want it to have a parent policy. This is where the rules come from. So you can say, no, I want to start from scratch, or you can say, yes, inherit the rules from the student policy, which are actually inheriting from default. So you don't always have to start from scratch. if you don't want to. Sometimes you need to. This is, though, basically just a list of apps. We haven't created a rule to send anyone into these actual policies yet, so that's where this Rules tab comes into play. There's a lot of different ways to do this. The most common are source address or something like username or a user group from Active Directory. As you can see, though, there are a lot of ways to do this. So if I entered the source address of 192.168.1.14, this device, no matter where it is on the network, who logs into it, will always come through my student lab policy, whatever I choose here. This is a very absolute rule. There's no way around this. That device always comes through these apps now. But there are a lot of conditions that we can do. So if you want to, for example, say this person only comes through this policy noon to 1:30 on Mondays, we can do that. Maybe students get YouTube available on lunchtime, Monday through Friday, and then at 1 p.m., they go back to their regular policy. There's a lot of things we can do like that, and it really doesn't matter how the folks are coming through Untangle. There's just a number of different ways to do it. So whether it's IP, username, MAC address, vendors, we can always set up policy based on those conditions and then pipe people around based on tags and usernames and a lot of different criteria. I do want to show you guys a quick peek at our Reports app because we have talked about reports a lot. So this is the app that you install that actually generates the reports viewer and then also the dashboard. So when Reports is installed, it'll generate all these reports here, and you can access any of them in the reports viewer from here. On the Data tab, this is where your data retention lives. So currently on my demo server, we're keeping 1 day of data. Like I said, if we need to, we can keep a year, but I would probably want to configure Google Drive to offload that stuff, or I would want to set up syslog events under the config menu. That will fill up a hard drive pretty fast. We report on a lot of traffic. So if you need to keep more than about 30 days or so, we usually recommend offloading that one way or another. Our email templates are a new cool thing. Untangle can now create reports users who are not admins on the device. So if a boss or a principal or an HR manager or anybody who's not an admin wants to see a piece of information from Untangle, we can set them up a summary template. So if they only want to see something like web filter usage, we can set up that template for them. We just create the user here and then we choose the template. Oh, I didn't create a template. Basically, we go create the template and then we create the user. So if they only want to see web filter information, that's all they need to see. We can come down here and take out everything except a web filter summary. Maybe they want to see all the applications that are being used on mobile devices. We can give them just that piece of information. So this is a very interesting tool now because we can set up daily, weekly, monthly reports, or if they don't want to report, we can also set them up with online access and just disable this and let them log in at their convenience. They'll get a little username and password and they'll be presented an HTML report when they log in. So if they don't want to be bothered with a summary email, we can also just set that up for them. Because we talked about it a little bit here in the build-up to getting in to the apps, I would like to talk about our virus blocker just a little bit. This has obviously become a pretty hot topic these days with ransomware and malware exploding across the world. We're doing some very interesting things to block viruses at the gateway. As you can see, we have 2 different versions of virus blocker here. Our light version is an open source community maintained product called ClamAV, but it does also connect to the Untangle cloud at no extra cost. So Scout IQ is included, and it can scan file extensions and MIME types at the gateway. Much like the light version, the full version can also do those things, but it installs the Bitdefender database locally and then does the Untangle Scout IQ cloud scan and the Bitdefender cloud scan. So both of these virus blockers will scan HTTP and SMTP and FTP. If we're scanning email on port 25, there's a couple of different options here for you if we see an infection in a message. We can also enter some past sites. These Windows Update sites are in by default. We don't scan those for viruses. Microsoft pretty much does all of that for you, so we just go ahead and not scan those. And back on the Advanced tab, we do, like I said, the Untangle Cloud Scan and this Bitdefender Cloud Scan, and we also do file extensions at the gateway. This is an extremely important feature to prevent malware and ransomware from hitting your network. My spiel on virus blocker is getting longer every day, but the condensed version is scanning these extensions at the gateway will prevent this Excel spreadsheet, which may have an infected macro with malware, from ever getting into your network. And it's never going to get to that person in accounting who opens every single spreadsheet they're ever sent. The sad but true fact of malware and ransomware is end users will always be the #1 problem. They're going to be. So you have to attack that in a couple of different ways. User education is a huge method of kind of curtailing this behavior, and it's hard. It's a constant battle. What we're doing here is basically trying to take that end user out of the equation. So if this little Excel spreadsheet hits the Untangle gateway and has some infections, we're going to see those infections at the gateway, and we're going to remove them before we pass that message on to bill and accounting. So it's as hard as it is to keep your end users educated and up to snuff with everything that's coming through phishing and malware, all that stuff. Untangle kind of takes a little bit of that load off your shoulders because we're going to do all that stuff at the gateway. So you should still always have endpoint protection because there's no 100% solution at the gateway. But if you are diligent with user education and you have something like Untangle, we're actually providing basically 4 different data sets. So we have the Bitdefender and the CLAM AV data sets locally, and then we do the cloud callouts to Untangle and to Bitdefender. So it is a pretty interesting solution as far as virus blocking goes, and I feel like it's a thing that people don't really expect from Untangle maybe. But once they dig into it, they see that we're doing some pretty advanced, pretty interesting things. And like I said in the demo portion earlier, we are getting all that telemetry data. So these services will see that 0-day malware distribution point, and they'll know that that's a bad IP, and then it's no more. So this is a very important part of ransomware and malware prevention to me, is blocking these things at the gateway. This is one of the only ways we know of that you can be proactive against malware and ransomware. If it gets to your end users, it's kind of over. You have to be retroactive now, and that's why companies go out of business after a ransomware attack. So it's hard to be proactive against it without something like Untangle at the gateway sniffing that traffic and letting you know what's going on. That being said, I would recommend you guys read up on the Scout IQ on our site. There's some really interesting data on it, and we do some pretty interesting reporting in the virus blocker as well. So if you're curious about that stuff, jump on the demo server, play around, and by all means, jump on our wiki page. It's wiki.untangle.com and read up on our virus blocker and the kind of stuff we're doing there. Shannon, do we have any questions we should throw out real quick?
Yes, we have been getting quite a number of questions.
Right.
Some of them are very specific, so I'll let our team members on the back end help answer those. But
sure.
One of the questions that came up was, what is the difference between the free version and the complete version?
Sure, and you can actually see that on our site. If you'll go to untangle.com, there's a software packages section underneath NG Firewall. The biggest difference is web filtering to me. Our free package offers no content filtering anymore. We have our Web Monitor free app, which is right here, and that will give you visibility into your network traffic, but it does not offer any filtering anymore. So if you need to really filter the web, if you need to throttle anyone's services, these are paid apps. This is a good breakdown right here, though. You can see all the apps that you get for free. So, if you just need a firewall with captive portal, it's a free option. There's a lot of cool things you can do with the free package, but like I said, it does not offer any filtering anymore, and it doesn't do any deep packet inspection. So you'll get HTTP monitoring, but nothing really beyond that.
Okay, great, Chad. And then actually, while you're still there, some people were asking how they, buy and what licenses and stuff. So
Sure.
Can you kind of go over that?
Yeah, one of the definite things we need to talk about is licensing. Untangle does license by IP, so we license by devices. What that means is unique and concurrent IPs in a 24-hour period that are passing traffic. So if you have an IP on your network that's had absolutely 0 packet transmission in 24 hours, that technically is not an active host to us. So when you start talking about cost, we want to filter the devices that you actually need to filter. So if you come over to untangle.com, you can click on our Buy tab. Another thing I think that separates us in this industry is our transparency. All of our hardware specs are posted online, and all of our pricing is online. This is normally kind of a roundabout process to get pricing from a company in this industry. So you can come, put your own quotes together, that kind of stuff. If you're specifically looking for a certain price, I would recommend contacting our sales team, sales@untangle.com, because they have a little bit more leeway than the site does. This is basically retail, but it is all available right here. If you want to scroll through, you can create your own package, all that kind of stuff. Our hardware is listed on here as well, and then also our professional services, which include a conversion service if you're if we're replacing an older device like a Cisco device or a Sonic Wall filter, something like that, we can actually, offer a service to convert those settings into your new Untangle box. So it's a little more plug and play than going through that whole thing yourself over a number of days and getting everything transferred. So we do offer some of those professional services to help things get moved over. But this is all just on untangle.com/buy.
Great, thanks, Chad. Can you also mention our free trial?
Yeah, you bet. Right here on the download tab, if you come into Untangle and click download, this will download you our 2-week free trial, like Shannon said. So as I pointed out, that's going to give you our complete package. So you get every single thing we make, including live support, for 2 full weeks. I recommend doing this if possible. So if you have a spare device or a virtual environment, cloud environment, you can install Untangle today, and you'll get free 2 weeks of everything we make. We do have a virtual appliance. Our OVA is built for VMware ESXi. That's what we build it for. It's what we support. Any other hypervisors that you want to use, I haven't found many that don't work, but we only technically support the VMware environment. We can help you actually with that virtual machine as well as the Untangle software. We have users that use it in Hyper-V and Proxmox and Citrix and VirtualBox, and it works fine. We have some VMware gurus here, though, and that's the one we can help with. A lot of options, though. We can install on a Linksys router now if you want to flash the firmware. If you want to just throw us on a piece of hardware, we do have 64 and 32-bit installers here. And then also some tutorials over here if you've never created a bootable USB, for example, or if you've never installed Untangle. There's really only 2 ways it installs. So whether we're in router or bridge mode, that will depend on whether or not there's a router in front of us. So the setup wizard will walk you through all of this. So it's a really, really simple install. You just have to kind of have an idea of what you want to do with Untangle before you start clicking.
Thanks, Chad. So now that you mentioned that Web Filter Lite is gone, can you kind of explain why we removed that and have Web Monitor now?
You bet. Web Filter Lite was becoming a problem because it was only seeing HTTP. So Web Filter Lite could not crack secure traffic and couldn't see encrypted traffic. As the internet moves more and more towards the implementation of SSL and HTTPS, Web Filter Lite was becoming almost a vulnerability because it was, I feel like it was becoming a false sense of security for some people. I've got Web Filter Lite, I'm filtering the web, was the attitude. And as time went on, that just wasn't true anymore. It just unfortunately wasn't. So when Web Filter Lite came out, yeah, it was gangbusters, and 70% of the web was still HTTP. But times have changed, so we had to change with them. We loved Web Filter Lite, obviously, for a long time. We didn't want to cast it aside like it had to be, but it was time. It was becoming a negative thing for us, I feel like, because people thought that was Untangle web filtering, and it really wasn't. It was a really, really, really incomplete aspect of web filtering, but it did its thing really well for a while. So replacing it with Web Monitor, I feel like we've, for one, taken away the false sense of security because now you're not trying to filter a bunch of stuff that you're missing, but you still get really good visibility. So if you just need a monitor into your HTTP traffic, it's fantastic for that. But if you're, if you need to get in and even, see what someone's doing on YouTube or Facebook, if you need to see search terms, what people are Googling, this is all HTTPS now. So honestly, we kind of had to change with the times. And Web Filter Lite was a casualty of war, so to speak. I'm glad we made the change because I think it was becoming a vulnerability, I think. And a web filter with SSL inspection does such a great job. There's no reason not to go for it.
Great. I think that's about it in terms of the questions. I know some of you have had some very specific questions, and John on the back end has helped answer those. So if you do have a very specific network configuration question in terms of how Untangle will work in your network, I would suggest reaching out to sales@untangle.com if you're new to Untangle. That way we can, better explain how Untangle can work best in your environment, and, Chad would be able to get on a call with you and do a specific webinar based on your industry or network setup. So, and again, I know questions are still coming in. We're kind of trying to wrap up right now, running out of time. If we don't get to your question, you can always email us, sales@untangle.com or support@untangle.com. Now, just want to reiterate something. We're very proud that Untangle has been included in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Unified Threat Management report for the second time in a row. As for those of you who are not aware of Gartner, they are a leading provider in research and advisory company. They provide guidance for every industry, so not just network security. We do offer this report on our website, so if you want to kind of read that and just see how they analyzed us and other companies in the industry, you can find that on our website. Next slide. Chad, thank you. Okay, so I'm very excited to announce also we have a new Untangle Security Upgrade program. So you may have gotten the email. We've kind of sent out a couple emails letting everyone know about this. This is a new program. It's basically provides you a big way to save money and provide an easy upgrade path. So whether you're using a current Untangle appliance or solution and you want to upgrade, or you have upgrade coming up, we have some really great incentives to lock in some great deals. If you have a competitor product appliance, we do offer a trade-in pricing and stuff like that. So I'm not going to give any pricing or anything like that on the webinar today, but you can contact your sales rep if you have someone you're working with, or just give us a call. So or email us at sales@untangle.com and just ask for more information about the program. We're really excited to introduce this for you guys. Let's see. I think that's it. I'm trying to look to see if there's any more questions that came in. I think we're covered. So again, if you are very interested in Untangle or just want to chat with us, we're here to talk. We have our forums that Chad mentioned, as well as support. And we're always here. We'd love to chat with you, see how Untangle can work best in your environment. If you have any feedback on webinars or anything like that, please email us. I'd love to get the feedback. If you have specific topics you want to hear about, someone asked if they're the first time using Untangle, how can I be taken through the process? I would suggest reaching out to support@untangle.com. They can help you walk through the process, or you can check out our website and look at the technical documentation. Our wiki has some great resources available to you. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Chad, I think we're good to go. So thanks so much for the great demo and the presentation. And we hope to see you next time.